I'm Julian. I run demandcurve.com growth training. I also write TechCrunch's marketing column, and I used to run marketing at a company called Webflow. I'm going to take that expertise along with my co-founder Neil, who's in this chat with us, and I'm going to run a B2B webinar, and it's going to be run like a podcast. So while there will be some visuals Neil will show you, it's not the emphasis. You're welcome to minimize Zoom and just listen to us talk. This is going to be broken into two batches of insights around B2B customer acquisition. And then after each batch, I'm going to get your guys' questions. Specifically, what are we going to cover? So it's going to be the intersection of ads, lead generation, and cold emailing for B2B businesses. And just to set expectations, most of the other webinars we're running are kind of advanced. This one's going to be a little bit more junior. You're still going to get insights you probably haven't heard before, but this is not going to be super advanced. We're not going crazy deep into marketing automation, but I am going to pick out some of the most interesting, clever insights that I've gleaned from the companies we've worked with that hopefully you haven't heard. This first batch of insights is going to be about prospecting and emailing. So I want to start off by saying usually the best way to know who needs you is often to see who already uses your competition. So we use tools like nerdydata.com or builtwith.com or datanize.com or clearbit.com. And I'm sure Neil can type those URLs out in the chat. And these tools scrape the web and find out what companies are using so that we can piggyback off that knowledge. So for example, if I am a company that offers, let's say some email marketing dashboard, I can go find other companies that use a competing email marketing tool and then email them telling them why their current solution, which you now know what it is, maybe they're using company X, why that's bad and why yours is markedly better. And that type of a wedge into a cold email is often the strongest way to get people to care and respond. So it's that sort of tactic we're going to be exploring in the next few minutes. So you don't just have to use those paid indexes that crawl the web for tools competitors use, companies that use your competitors. There's a bunch of clever hustlery ways to find this data. Number one, search Twitter for keyword mentions of your competitors. Because usually if non-press people are mentioning your competitor on Twitter, it means they either love or hate the product because they've used it. So then match the person doing the tweeting to their LinkedIn profile. Like look at their location, look at their headshot, go to LinkedIn, type in their name, figure out who they are on LinkedIn, and then see who their employer is. And now you know that employer uses one of your competitors. Another example is go to all of your competitors' web pages. Look at the client logos they so proudly display on the homepage. All of those logos are companies that use their product, meaning companies you can steal, right? Similarly, if they have testimonials, see who's leaving the testimonials. If they have case studies, see who the case studies were for. These are all signals of companies or customers they have for you to go after. A couple more examples. Let's say you're a Chrome app. Your number one source of leads is looking at the reviews for all of your competing Chrome apps and seeing the people who left the reviews. And so there's a couple portals for this, like g2crowd.com or g2.com and getapp.com. Again, Neil can type those URLs out for you guys if you want. And these portals aggregate reviews for common, usually like B2B SaaS type tools, and you can see who's leaving the reviews. So you guys get the gist. Let me wrap this up with a concrete example. So we had a client, actually just for context, so demandcurve.com runs an agency called Bell Curve. And so we work with a bunch of companies, we run growth. And we had one client where we actually built a crawler that crawled the top 1 million sites on the web according to Alexa.com's traffic rankings. And we scraped the HTML and looked for fingerprints of competing tools because this client was a WordPress plugin. And the cool thing about WordPress plugins is they leave an impression in the HTML code. You can see, if you go look at the source of a web page, you can see all the WordPress plugins being used, not all of them, but many. And so we just programmatically detected who was using the competing WordPress plugin that we knew was materially worse than ours. We cold emailed these people and said, hey, like you're using a way outdated version. Ours is modern, Ours uses Stripe. Ours is beautiful, better UX. You're going to get higher retention, all these other things. And that was the highest performing cold outreach campaign we'd ever run because we were going very niche, very narrow. We were making the email relevant to the recipient because we knew a lot about what they were using. A lot of them were like, how the hell do you know that we're using that plugin? Like, it's otherwise not obvious unless you look at the HTML. So I think the response rate was 50%, which I don't know that we've since maybe once or twice achieved that. And the rate to getting onto a phone call from those who responded was like 80%. It was like that, by the way, those numbers are insane and they almost never happen, but this is a really good example. And so this leads me to how did we pull off those scheduled call rates? Well, the trick with any outreach when you're I'll just say, I'm not going to, this whole webinar is not going to be about competitors. So I'm going to move off this topic in a moment, but I do want to wrap up by saying the trick with piggybacking off competitor awareness is you need to send the recipient to a landing page that compares you versus the competitor head to head. Like you got to have a matrix, chart breakdown that points it out explicitly. It will not be self-evident to the recipient why you're better if you just send them to your generic homepage. They're not going to do all the math on your value propositions and figure out why you're so much better. They don't have the patience for that. You got to make it really obvious. And that technique, that comparison landing page, doubles as SEO fodder, right? When people Google, demandcurve.com versus some competitor, we'll show up in the results. We'll have that comparison. And also, coincidentally, I'm not going to get into this today, but some of the best performing ads on Facebook I've ever run were just me basically shitting on competitors. So I'm not shitting in terms of telling people why the competitor is bad, but just saying why we're so much better, right? Like you have to maintain a good reputation, or it's going to really come back to bite you. So we never try to hurt the brand of other companies. We just try to promote ours, and that's the good citizen approach you want to take. You got to be careful with that. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through a few more insights in the same sort of vein, and then I'm going to pause, get your guys' questions. So quick reminder, use the Q&A feature in the middle of your screen at the bottom there on Zoom. Ask questions relevant to what I'm talking about, and I'm going to answer them. Unless I have no idea what you're talking about, then I won't answer them. All right, couple more insights, and then I'll pause. So let's move on to, okay, let's say you have the LinkedIn profile of somebody that works at your target prospect company, right? So you found someone through that Twitter trick or some G2 crowd review trick, whatever it is. So there's a few tools we use for getting emails. So one is called Scrap, S-K-R-A-P-P. It's a Chrome plugin. It's pretty decent. Another one I'm sure you guys have heard of is Hunter.io. But the two that frankly work the best in our experience, and what I mean by that is get you emails that are legit, because oftentimes these tools guess at random email, like, oh, well, we're going to put some permutation on the first name, period, last name, and we'll guess what it is. Those don't work enough. It's very annoying. So you want to use a tool called gem, Gem.com, or a tool called Clearbit, Clearbit.com. In my experience, Clearbit is always the most accurate. They don't guess. Like they just know. So those are some tools to use for getting the email. Now, once you have the email, before you email, this is the trick we like to do. And we're soon going to demonstrate whether this makes a huge difference. I believe it will. We're collecting the data right now. But we do this thing called pre-targeting. So before we even shoot you an email, we don't want to be some random company you've never heard of. So we'll use LinkedIn ads to whitelist the people we know we're about to cold email because we've just made this spreadsheet of them. And we're going to run ads against everyone in the right job functions who work at those companies. And that's the power of LinkedIn ads. They give you incredible firmographic targeting capability. So you can dial into the exact company, job function, anything. So we blast you with ads before we email you. So you're like, oh yeah, of course I've heard of you guys. And that tends to increase response rates. And we're going to have a lot of good data on this very soon. It's specifically the type of ad I would run on LinkedIn is a sponsored content ad, or they might call it a newsfeed ad. So you want something very visual and in your face. And I'll get back to ads later, like B2B ad stuff in a little bit. So I'll circle back to that. Okay, so you figured out who you're emailing, you got their email, and maybe you've done some pre-targeting if you wanted to. how do you send a good email? So I'm going to say the obvious up front, even though I guess in practice it's not, because I get tons of terrible emails, as I'm sure you guys do too. But emails always have to feel like they were personally written for the recipient. That's table stakes. There's no exceptions there. Otherwise, you're just spam. And even if your spam is highly relevant, this is what people don't realize. People don't want to feel like they're chumps who are clicking on your spam emails. It's an ego hit if you've successfully appealed to them, but they know you're just spamming them. They're like, this is gross. This is icky. In the old days, it wasn't like this. In 2019, this is how it's like. So you want an email to legitimately look like it was written for that person. And that's not like throwing in one variable. Like, oh, I see you work at insert company here, and then you go onto your spammy pitch. People recognize how variables work, what merge tags are. That's not going to get you anywhere. So what you really want to do is up that one level. You don't want to swap in a variable. You want to swap in sentences. You want like batches of sentences tailored to that person's company type or that person's needs. Or if that person uses a competitor, then you can have like one pre-written blurb about why you're better than that competitor, another pre-written blurb about why you're better than another competitor, and you swap those in based on what the lead would most care about. That's what it means to have a personalized email. And for these email bodies, A/B test them. Never just roll with a version, set it and forget it. That's crazy. So like we'll see performance differences going from 0 conversion to 15% stable conversion. So meaning like send an email, get a call, by just finding slightly better email copy. Had we not done that, we would have mistakenly thought the whole campaign was a failure, or our targeting was a failure, or our product's not interesting. It's like, no, just cold emails are really hard to do right. Getting the click is really hard to do right. And you have to think very deeply about how to write copy that looks personalized and is useful and relevant. So on that topic of copy, keep it short and punchy. The longer it is, the more it's going to look like an ad. So think of it like this. You wouldn't email a coworker or a friend with 9 paragraphs of crap, right? So write cold emails like you write to friends so they seem like real personalized emails sent to you that aren't pitches. So have just a few sentences, skip the intro preamble, have less information than you think is necessary. You don't have to start out with, hey, I'm from company X, I do Y, we provide Z, and here are the cool things about us, go ahead, click our link. It's like, no. Hey, I saw you were doing X. We're actually a bit better than X because of Y. All the details are on our website. You can click here for more. If this is interesting to you, let me know, and I'm happy to hop on a phone call. That is what an email looks like when you're talking to someone you know, or just talking like a real person. And the real takeaway there is let your landing page do the heavy lifting of the pitching. Don't try to cram the full pitch into the email body. That's when you start raising alarms. So the extension there, like if you follow that advice, the next step is making sure you have a great landing page, which is not what we're going to talk about on this page, in this webinar, although it's super relevant, but it's because we're splitting it out into another webinar on this coming Monday at 2 p.m. PST. So you're welcome to join that. In terms of the tool we use to send emails, we like Persist IQ. Maybe Neil can pull that up if he has a chance, no sweat if not. And so we use Persist IQ to automate our email outreach and the follow-ups to those emails if people don't respond. Usually a couple additional follow-ups can move the needle. I personally hate sending them. I don't send follow-ups just because I find them icky. When someone sends me an email and then follows up 2 days later saying, yo, just want to make sure you got this, I'm like, oh man, you are the worst. So I don't do that to others. Probably I get a little bit of a conversion hit from that, but it's just how I want to present myself on the internet. That sort of thing I find very annoying. So, okay, before we wrap up this first batch of B2B insights, we're going to do a Q&A in a moment. Then we're going to do a second batch after that, where I'm going to go give you guys insights on how do you make ads work for B2B, including really high value, hard to get accounts. We'll talk about that. Before I get to the Q&A, couple tricks you guys might like for cold emailing. So first is programmatically pumping out inline images in your email outreach. So here's what I mean by that. Let's say you're a swag company and you're targeting startups with cold emails that contain images showcasing their company logo on your t-shirts to visualize what your product is like in the real world. If you send someone an email with an inline image showing their logo on your product, they're gonna be like, wow, this was, first of all, this clearly is personalized. I don't even know if someone can automate that. So like, this is interesting, or they took a long time to do this. So I might respond, even if I'm not interested, because this was pretty cool. And you visualize the value of the product to make it more interesting to actually convert or get on a call. And you can automate this. So you can use the Clearbit company logo API and the Cloudinary image creation API. And those two, you pipe those into like an emailing tool like PersistIQ. You can automate 100% of that, grabbing the company's logo programmatically from your spreadsheet, dumping it into an image, like superimposing it onto an image, and then crafting the image programmatically into like a PersistIQ campaign. So none of this has to be manual. And the reason I bring this up is because that level of personalization, and props to you if you can automate that, really tends to move the needle on response rates. And so, actually I'm gonna pause that there. Last email trick, then Q&A. So this next one is very sneaky. I'm not a fan of it, but I wanna share it so you guys can play off of it and find alternatives. So I got an email the other day from a company called Brex, BREX.com. And this is what it looked like. This might be hard for me to describe, so just give me your patience for a second here. I got an email that was a forwarded email. And as part of the forward, someone added their own secondary note. So hopefully that makes sense so far. The original email being forwarded to me was the CEO or some executive at Brex saying, hey, go talk to Julian Shapiro. I like what he's doing, and I want you to give him a year free of Brex. And then that email was ostensibly forwarded to this other salesperson, the person who actually contacted me. So they then forwarded that email to me and added a note which read, hey, Julian, my boss thinks you're awesome, sees what you're up to, and we'd love to have you as an early customer. And I bought it. I was completely, I actually thought that was a real email. I didn't realize that was automated, but it was entirely a ploy. And I remember getting on the sales call with the person. I'm like, how did your boss know who I am? Like, what's the backstory? And they brushed it off real quick. The salesperson was like, oh, you just came across your stuff. I'm like, okay. So I learned later it was automated. It was brilliant though. Absolutely brilliant. A little bit tricky. So do what you want with that. The takeaway there is there are clever things you can do. They're gonna get burned down after a while, right? Like people are gonna recognize the pattern. Everything, all these patterns, like all of these gimmicky patterns eventually die, always. The things that don't die are the same best practices, like the growth frameworks, write good, concise copy, A/B test your approach, get good data, and on and on. All right, let me pause. Neil, I'm gonna go through some of these questions. Let's see here. I feel like I grant a sort of, beyond WordPress, if you use the tool nerdydata.com or Datanyze or builtwith.com, they'll list so many things beyond the WordPress footprint. They'll find like every single thing that people use that can be like detected or sniffed, like what email tools do other companies use, what analytics tools do they use, what JavaScript libraries, on and on and on. You can find really everything. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so Danny asked a question in regard to like, do we do this in bulk? Absolutely. So like we'll bulk scrape or bulk acquire data, then we'll dump it into a spreadsheet and maybe use a tool like Zapier or some PersistIQ Google Sheets plugin to automate that wholesale transfer of leads right into PersistIQ. None of this is done manually. We have to automate it. We actually might start very manual just to validate things and make sure we don't introduce weird bugs. It's really embarrassing when I shoot off an email and like there's a weird blurb template variable thing that went wrong. So you get the point there. In terms of if no one follows up, should you consider the email lead dead? The average B2B growth guru person would say you must follow up. You must have like 7 touch points. I leave that up to you. Try both and see how much of an additional conversion rate is there by following up 3 times versus not following up. Take a data-driven approach. Don't just listen to my advice. And my advice is more so subjective because I don't like annoying people. I'd rather be able to come back to them in 4 months with another email and not have them hate me. So do what works for you. I'm going to go through questions for maybe just a few minutes, then we're going to dive into what are the insights we have for making ads work. And then we'll do more Q&A after, so not to worry. Okay, I'm going to keep reading a few. Do you recommend sending email? Anything around email deliverability? Should you split emails across domains? How do you make sure you warm up your IPs? I am not a guru at that. My recommendation is to Google, look at HubSpot's guides, look at Clearbit's guides, and look at Persist IQ's guides on those topics. For the sales CRM we use is often Copper. We love it. Copper automatically syncs with Persist IQ and all these other tools. So that's something I'll recommend. Broader question, if you get ignored by one person at a company, should you contact additional decision makers? Absolutely. I don't think that's annoying at all. When people get an email they ignore, they don't go forward it to everyone on their team and say, hey, look at this, right? Absolutely feel free to keep emailing others as long as they're all appropriate people to email. I'm still reading some more here. How do you obtain bulk data? Basically through the ways I mentioned, right? Use those tools. There's also, you can buy bulk customized data from certain providers, but I forget what they're called. How can you update the 1-to sensors? All right, just give me your patience, guys. I'm gonna just go through a couple more. What were those image automation APIs? Let me write that into the chat right now, because it's a little bit of a hard one. So if you guys check the chat, oh, I'm sorry, put it in the wrong area. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, here we go. Check the chat for URL. That is the tool I use to automate image creation. It's fantastic. That's answering Cass's question. Let's see. Okay, I answered the follow-up. Really, the way to think about LTV and CAC and whether you should do cold email, like the cost is your time, right? So how much is your time worth, or how much is your salesperson's time worth? And extrapolate from there. And that's how you should be thinking of it. If you can make it work profitably, congrats, scale it up, and then automate it and batch as much as you can. Give me a second here. I'll look at some more. Oh, Neil, now I know what you meant the other day when you said this kind of bugs out a bit. Should you sell to a high or low? Okay, so like a C-level person or a low-level person, entirely case by case. So who does your tool most appeal to? That's who is the power user of your tool. When a whole company's onboarded onto your tool, who's the person that has the highest frequency of usage and falls in love with you and is retained? That is your in at the company. If you have two options, high and low person, like a junior versus senior person, if it's a big company, go for the junior. They'll probably have more bandwidth to listen to you. Try to get a wedge in there. If they're a small company, definitely go senior so you can get to the decision maker earlier on. How long should you run the pre-targeting ads on LinkedIn before you send the cold email? It's a great question. It's a function of how big your target audience is. So when you run ads on LinkedIn, it's going to tell you what your estimated audience size is. So if your estimated size is 1,000 people, then wait until you've hit a certain frequency of impressions that gives you some idea of how many impressions there have been per person, right? So if the reporting dashboard of LinkedIn ad says there have been 10,000 impressions, then maybe it doesn't actually work out this well, but maybe each person has seen it 1,000 times, or 100 times, 10 times. So the point basically is get to a point of saturation where they've at least seen the ad, and it doesn't matter if they clicked on it, they just need to be able to recall your brand, logo, name, whatever. In my view, like 10 impressions to 20 impressions per person is maybe a starting point. I'm still figuring out what that is, so I'm just riffing right now. I have no idea. I'm still trying to learn the specifics. Okay. I'm going to wrap up the Q&A on this section in a moment. How do you identify the decision maker? That's like that goes down to analyzing your tool. Actually, I'll give you guys a clever trick for that one. Export your entire user list, upload it to clearbit.com. They have this batch tool. You can upload a spreadsheet of email addresses. This is what Clearbit's going to do for you. They're going to populate every email address in that spreadsheet you upload with the role of that person at their employer. And then you can pattern match that against frequency of usage, like retention, like I mentioned a moment ago, who are your power users, And now you know what are the roles, what are the job functions, marketers, engineers, what, that are the real people that are resonating best with your app, right? Or you can just survey in your own application. Before, as they sign up, ask what's your role, tag that to them, and then when you assess your own data internally, you know who your who your key decision makers are. Michael, I'm just reading your thing here. Michael, you're awesome. Yeah, the Brex email forwarding trick is very clever. Yeah, I'd be thoughtful there, guys. If all of you use it over the next year, it's going to eventually tank because a couple big companies will use it, like Brex, and then it'll just tank. But you're welcome to go jump in and make it work for you now. Okay, two last ones. Do you write custom code to do the images? Nope, I use Cloudinary. See the link in Zoom. How much budget do we put on LinkedIn? My pre-targeting budget depends on the total size of the audience, but maybe something like $150 to $500. But really, I'm riffing on that one. I don't have specific numbers on that at the moment. Okay, I'm gonna do one more because I'm afraid people might be getting bored from me answering Q&As. I don't know, so let me just skim them real quick. Inline images, in my experience, don't throw me to spam. It depends on the email. There's a lot of heuristics Google uses. They're very good. If there's one inline image and that's it, midway through, it's a short, terse email, and your email hasn't been used to send 1,000 spam emails in the hour, it should go through usually. That might change over time. Okay, I'm going to pause there. I'm going to continue, and then keep the questions coming because we're going to do more Q&A afterwards, so not to worry. Alrighty, guys. So this next batch of insights will be focused on ads. I suspect I'll do this for 10 minutes. Then I'll do maybe one last 10-minute burst of Q&A, and we'll call it a wrap. Okay, hold on here. So any questions coming in? Neil, if I could ask you to just dismiss all outstanding questions unless they're related to ads or retargeting, that's cool. And then all incoming questions, you guys, if you could tailor them to ads and what the topics I'm about to bring up, that would be awesome. It would be more helpful for other people. Okay, LinkedIn ads. So the big question that people don't know the answer to, which would save them tens of thousands of dollars if I told them now, is what businesses have any chance in hell at working with, at making LinkedIn ads work? It clusters very tightly around just a few types of businesses which do not represent the majority. That's why LinkedIn ads typically are not good. So if you are an employment recruiting service, so if you can run an ad that's something like, we want to hire coders like you, submit your resume, you're going to do very well in LinkedIn ads. If you are a higher education organization like an MBA school recruiting applicants, you're going to do very well in LinkedIn ads. Now, the third category is B2B products and services with LTVs, so lifetime value, so total revenue accrued per individual, per customer, greater than usually like $15,000. That's usually what's needed to make the economics of LinkedIn ads work. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule, but it does tend to be true. However, it's regardless worth trying LinkedIn ads if LinkedIn is the only place you can actually target your prospects. Like if you have to target people of a specific job function of a specific company in specific verticals, you don't really have a choice when it comes to ads other than LinkedIn. In which case, try it, but your ads, landing pages, sales flow, sales collateral are going to have to be phenomenal to make the economics work. And what I mean by that is the cost per click on LinkedIn ads are usually insane, like literally 20 times higher than Facebook and Instagram. The engagement on your landing page after someone clicks from a LinkedIn ad tends to be terrible, just terrible, like a fifth to a tenth of the engagement you'd get from a Facebook visitor. So now we've taken a high cost per click and magnified its poor performance, right? So there are a couple ways, however, to remedy this. The biggest trick is you rethink what LinkedIn is doing for you. Don't think about LinkedIn as a way to get an immediate demo sign up, an immediate purchase. Think of it as a way to get someone's email address and to pixel track them. If you take that approach, like a retargeting or email capture first approach to LinkedIn, then the economics work a bit better in your favor. So I'm going to get back to that in just a moment. but more on this topic of how to make LinkedIn ads work. So 2 ads that tend to work okay. One is the right-hand side column ad, which is a text ad. The way you don't do them right is you use your company's logo. Nobody clicks that. The way you do them right is you put a zoomed in face of an attractive man or woman so that the eye thinks it's another person who's like in their network. Like you want to trick the LinkedIn user to think that the ad is actually a profile of somebody they know, right? And that's how you blend in and get clicks. So that can like double or triple your CTR on those text ads. So that's one way to make the ads work. Another way is, so LinkedIn has like 7 or 8, or they have a bunch of ad units. Another ad unit they have is the feed ad, right? These are the big image ads like you'd see in your Facebook feed. The trick there that I have found is don't use your image for stock photography. In fact, don't use your image for any photography. Put a giant piece of text, huge type, big bold letters with a very catchy phrase that that highlights the top value proposition that would get people to click, right? That is how you circumvent people's ad reflex radar, where they're scrolling through their feed and they see some stock imagery thing of a woman on a laptop smiling in a window. Like, people don't click on that. But if you just have this giant piece of text like, hey, you're doing X wrong, here's how to do it right, or something less clickbaity than that, that has a better chance of getting clicks. That I've tested that extensively, including the face in the ad thing. Those 2 things are definitely data-driven recommendations I can give you guys. So back to this notion of you got your LinkedIn ads, but the economics suck. So we got to capture the email or pixel them and blast them on Facebook. So let's tackle those 2 things. Capturing their email is a matter of having a really good reason for it, right? So you guys know where I'm going with this, so I'm going to keep this very brief. Create some content, guides, webinars, ebooks, white papers, right? Get their email in exchange for getting access to your content. Give them the first little bit of the content, tease them with it, right? Or maybe just get their email so they can see a live real-time demo. That might work, but usually won't. We can give it a shot if you don't have actual content to produce. And get that email. And then it's up to your drip emails, the automated emails you send after you capture someone's email, to do the real heavy lifting of conversion. And that is where the economics of LinkedIn wind up working. Another way to think about it is you just use LinkedIn to get them onto your website, and you're also running Facebook ads or Instagram ads. And so they get pixel tracked by Facebook automatically, and now you run ads to them on Facebook. And the reason why that's so brilliant is Facebook ads and Instagram ads convert way better than LinkedIn ads. Even if it's the same person, the same time of day, going to the same landing page. That's the weird psychological phenomenon of Facebook versus LinkedIn. My theory is when you go to LinkedIn, you're there to, like, I don't know, see who messaged you, see who viewed your profile, and whatever else. Like things that are specific business or vanity objectives. Now, if you're on Facebook, you're there to kill time, usually. So when you do see an ad, you're more likely to engage with the landing page you arrive at. And that's the brilliance. So you cross-target them on Facebook, right? Let's see what else we got here. Keep your Q&A questions coming in. Keep them relevant, if you don't mind, to this any topics I'm discussing right now. Keep them coming. I'm going to answer them in a moment. I got 2 or 3 more good insights for you guys. Okay. What are the other ad networks for B2B companies beyond LinkedIn, right? If I say LinkedIn has the worst economics, why don't we do Facebook, Instagram, Quora, Snapchat, Pinterest, Twitter, Reddit, and on, Google, YouTube. So for B2B companies, if you're enterprise, if you're targeting niche people, the only way to go super niche is LinkedIn. Yeah, it's LinkedIn ads. You might be able to, on a case-by-case basis, use Facebook and Instagram's targeting to target people on a per job title basis and based on how big the employee count of their employer. But it's not very comprehensive data. It can often be outdated. And it's lacking a lot of accuracy in niches. So it's nowhere near as good as LinkedIn for those purposes of targeting accuracy. But you can still use Facebook if you can find the right audience using their targeting tools. You can also use Facebook in a secondary way, which is creating a seed audience, uploading all of your leads and users, uploading their emails to Facebook and creating a lookalike off of that seed audience. I'm not going to go into what that means. You can Google Facebook lookalike, Facebook seed audience. But the general idea is you're taking like 1,000 emails from your customers and you're telling Facebook to find more people like those 1,000 people. So they're going to find what those people have in common, extrapolate, and find another up to 1 million people who to a varying degree on a spectrum are similar in behavior. And what that means is by behavior is Facebook knows the websites people visit, and they know your email address, and they know what you click on Facebook. And they put that all together, and when you upload an email address for Julian Shapiro, they know that I like, I don't know, whatever weird things I like. And so if I and everyone at Demand Curve all like similar things, Facebook sees based on that uploaded list that it should find more people who like those things, right? So if you're uploading a list of people who love your tool for UX designers, Facebook is going to go figure out very quickly that you want to find more UX designers. And that's the brilliance of lookalike audiences. Here's the kicker. This is where almost every client I have ever worked with has gone wrong. When you create a lookalike, Facebook requires you to extrapolate up to 1 million people. Now, be real, which is to say, are there really 1 million CTOs of enterprise tools in North America who need the thing that you have? Absolutely not. And so even though they're creating a 1 million person audience, your actual realistic audience might only be 1,000 to 10,000 people. And what Facebook does, they don't advertise this, but this is what you need to know, is the more money you spend per day or in any given period on that lookalike when you're targeting it, the more you venture out into the extremes of the extrapolation. And the further out in the extreme, the less similar the marginal user is to your initial seed audience. So if I spend $10 a day on my lookalike, $300 a month, I'm just going to be targeting the best of the best, legit CTOs of whatever, right? If I spend, if that works, clients often say, hey, it's working brilliantly. I want to spend $100 a day. Great, we up it. And it still works. Then we up to $1,000 a day and they expect the performance to remain, and it doesn't. And that's where clients ignore our recommendations and then get hurt and misplan all their growth projections. So something to keep in mind. Finally, I'll say you can use Quora ads. They popped up like a couple years ago. And the trick there is target niche interests using their interest targeting feature that only people in your target audience would ever realistically search for, right? So like, Neil, I think I had one link that was like a Quora query. Yeah, exactly. If you guys look at the screen share here, it's a Quora topic for how can I collect emails for email marketing, right? So someone doing that might be a salesperson. Very reasonable to assume they're a salesperson. Great. Go find all of the types of questions a salesperson would ask on Quora and run your ads against those types of questions, right? So you're inferring who they are, what their job function is based on their questions, because Quora does not currently have job title targeting. Because your general goal is to get to the right person, right? You don't want to spray and pray. I will wrap up by saying the situation in which you can spray and pray is if you're a super broad, low-cost B2B tool like Slack, or maybe Zoom, which we're on right now, then you can be much less niche and your job is technically easier, but in other ways harder because you're not fulfilling a really desperate niche. So people might not be like, oh my God, finally this thing exists. You also probably don't charge as much if you're super broad. So you might not be able to spend as much on ads to acquire a customer. There are always trade-offs. And you might not be able to make cold email reach, cold outreach work if you're a super broad tool. It's usually the more niche your tool, the better your cold email response rates typically, because you're solving a real niche need that the recipient has, right? Give me a second, I have some other cool insights here. I'm just gonna take a break, catch my breath. Keep those questions coming in. I'm gonna answer them in just a moment. And just make sure the questions come in through the Q&A as opposed to through the Zoom chat. Okay, a couple more good insights for you guys. Hopefully these are helpful so far. This is a trick I love. A friend taught me this, which is if you're a B2B company and you really want to build brand awareness, but you don't want to just throw money at the wall while you're doing so, build a community on Slack and run ads to your community. So here's what I mean by that. find a niche where people are badly wanting to talk to each other about that problem. So like lattice.com, which is a tool for HR professionals, they're running tons of ads to drive people who are HR professionals using LinkedIn's targeting to their Slack group, which is a wonderful community for HR professionals. And now all those people have some place to chat, and it's under the umbrella of the Lattice brand. And because Lattice runs the Slack group, they can periodically promote themselves to everybody in it. It is one of the most brilliant ways to keep yourself top of mind. There's a lot more to it. I think a lot of it's self-evident. If not, ask the questions, happy to answer. So I'm going to just wrap up the second batch of insights before we get to the Q&A and some other cool stuff by giving you another insight here. Actually, I guess before I do the next insight, I'll do a couple housekeeping things so we can end with a bang later, which is, if this is at all helpful to you so far, you're welcome to go to demandcurve.com/webinars. And you're welcome to sign up for the 2 remaining ones. There's one for content marketing, which will be co-hosted by Nat Eliason, who knows a lot more about content marketing than I do. He is the best that I've come across. And one on landing pages. You're welcome to sign up for those, and you're welcome to invite your coworkers. In regard to recording this, we may or may not. If we do record it, we'll send you guys a link via email. And finally, I guess I should just make a quick plug. I'd be remiss if I didn't. If you check out demandcurve.com, you can see where all of these insights are coming from. These are all insights we glean from working with a lot of companies. And then we do hands-on training where we upgrade your copywriting skills, landing page skills, ad making skills across all the major channels. We work with you on B2B Outreach, other areas of growth, all that good stuff. We teach you to a really good level of competency to do what we do. All right, back to insights, then we'll do some Q&A. Okay, so if you remember earlier, I was talking about gating content. Well, let me talk to you about what I have found makes for really good content. So again, as a reminder, content examples might include guides like the Julian.com Guide to Growth Marketing, which you may have read, podcasts, like you being interviewed on a podcast, maybe your own podcast, webinars like this one. Now, the highest leverage use of content is not what people think it is. People usually think that is how I'm going to prospect, meaning that's how I'm going to go and present myself to people for the very first time. I use content for retargeting. So I get people to come to my landing page, let's say from LinkedIn, pixel track them, and I retarget them on Facebook with the following. I use pieces of content that I think of as conversion boosting, not lead driving. And that's an important distinction. So conversion boosting content, like I'm now pitching you guys, is content that when you consume it, you think, wow, these guys are actually experts. They are authoritative, they're credible, I trust them, they know what they're talking about. What I'm doing with you guys right now is the perfect example. This webinar is an example that I know what I'm talking about, hopefully. And then you guys go say, oh, you guys walk away saying, all right, when I need to be taught growth by someone, maybe it'll be these guys, right? So figure out what the parallel is in your field, demonstrate your expertise, and then push this aggressively through your retargeting. And let people see you're an expert. And the objective of that is that when they do need you, they're going to come back to you. And the objective is not get them to immediately sign up and do something. It's just to be in their wheelhouse. And so you want to curate a few pieces of hero content. My pieces of hero content, so the specific areas, the specific things I do this with, is I did an interview on Indie Hackers where I spoke about growth marketing. And I did some really cool tests where I ran ads with that podcast versus other podcasts I had done. And I discovered when people listen to me do the Indie Hackers podcast, an enormous percent, relatively speaking, because ad conversion rates are always pretty small, then sign up for a call with us. I was like, oh, that's interesting. What's so special about that Indie Hackers thing? Because I never pitched Demand Curve in the Indie Hackers thing. All I did was just sound smart and establish expertise. And then I kept trying tests like that, and every time that proved true. And then if you have retargeting running for up to 6 months after they visited your website, you're always going to stay top of mind, they're going to trust you. And then you compare that with ads that remind them why your tool is amazing, right? Okay, I'm going to look at some Q&A. If If you're bored from me rambling, you're welcome to leave. I'm going to now wrap up with maybe 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to answer the best questions we got in here. Please keep them coming. I'm going to try to answer as many as I can until I run out of breath. And also in a moment, I'm going to enable Zoom chat so you guys can let me know whether this was useful for you. And any feedback you have, good or bad, would love to hear it. So I'll enable that in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions. Give me 1 second. Let me remember how to enable this. Allow attendees to chat with everyone. All right, you guys are welcome to Zoom chat as much as you want. Not for questions, but if you have any commentary or thoughts. Okay, looking at the questions. Let me see here. This is a great, oh, go ahead, Neil. Yeah.
This is Neil. I'm just want to point out, Julian, that I have answered some of the questions. So if you also want to look at the answered things just to see if there's better questions there that you want to answer, and maybe my answer wasn't to your liking. So just letting you know.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. All right. Keep them coming, guys. It's my pleasure to answer these. So please keep them coming. This is fun for me to do. Okay. Let's take a look here. Matt, I actually don't know their lattice.com Slack invite page offhand, but if you want to sneak anybody, any domains web pages, go to lattice.com/site. Oh, Neil beat me to it. All right, check the Zoom. Neil has shown you what their landing page looks like. Thank you, Neil.
I've also added it to the chat.
Beautiful. There's the link. How long is a sales call after you get a bite? What info do you run them through? I would check, not to be too self-promotional, but it is the best way to answer this. Go to julian.com, click on the growth marketing guide. I have a whole page dedicated to how to run your sales calls in a non-spammy, concise, effective way. Are there any startup discounts for Clearbit and elsewhere? I don't know. It's a great question, Rich. I got a trick for you guys. If you're a legitimate fit for startup school, go to, Neil, is it startupschool.org? Would you mind letting us know? Neil will pull it up. Yeah, okay. Go to startupschool.org. It's YC's pre-YC mini accelerator thing. If you're a legitimate fit, like don't spam them and don't scam them, apply to the program. When you get in, you'll see some great deals and some discounts. That's one perk of going to accelerators. Or anything else to add there? What do you think of, haven't heard of Tribe? What is the minimum effective amount of spend for a B2B ad on a niche like fashion? The minimum amount of money you spend is a function of what is your target cost per acquisition. Then you have to spend some amount, a multiple over that to get a significant sample size. Go to julian.com, click on the growth marketing guide, click on maybe ads, I think, and you'll see some more of the math on that. Best practices from Quora ads. It's a great question. I would say, very self-referential works well. Like, hey, I know you're currently reading about email marketing. Well, this is the tool that is most useful for email marketing. That's a terrible piece of copy, but you get the idea. We haven't found retargeting to be very good on Quora for us. We have found prospecting to be fine. We often found ourselves having to narrow into just iOS or just Android devices. Like usually just Android will perform really well. So if we skip, just iOS will perform really well. So if we exclude Android, suddenly we cut our cost of acquisition in half. We have found things like that here and there. In terms of retargeting your gated content, I like to blast hard in 4 days. The 4-day retargeting window is the highest average time to blast your ads. Then I taper off significantly after that. 6 months of retargeting, don't take that literally. What I'm referring to is like the Facebook pixel allows you to target someone for up to 180 days. So you can divvy up your retargeting. You can segment however you want over time. So you can blast people really hard for 4 days, a little bit less for 30 days, a little bit less for 40 days, and then you can just stop there, or you can go all the way up to 180 days. Typically, the most high leverage way is very hard in 4 days, a little bit weaker for 3 days after that in terms of spend. And then I personally stop advertising because at that point I was annoying people. And the reason I go so hard in 4 days is all the data has shown me that that is the most likely period of time that someone's going to convert. But this is usually more so for quicker turnaround closes. Like broad B2B tools, direct-to-consumer e-commerce, not necessarily long cycle e-commerce stuff. I haven't worked with Bolt or Firm. I've heard both are pretty awesome. Let's see here. If you have any questions about the Demand Curve program, feel free to shoot them over to questions@demandcurve.com, and you're going to get a priority response because that is the webinar only email. So check that out. What rule of thumb do you use to determine? This is a great question, Walter. This is the $1 million question. What rule of thumb do you use to determine if the ad channel isn't viable or if it's the ads that you're currently running on the channel? Super good question. So the general rule of thumb is if you're targeting the correct audience on an ad channel, the ad shouldn't matter that much. Because if the audience wants what you have, you might pitch yourself really poorly, but as long as you're making it clear what you are, you're not obfuscating it, they should come through. So first and foremost, get some half-decent ads up, but target the absolutely correct audience and see if that works. If you can't get the channel working from that foundation, the odds of you finding an ad that works 10 times better, makes or breaks the channel, is pretty unlikely. LinkedIn Video Ads Insights. I don't have many. I've run them. They seem to perform okay. Try them. I have a lot of insights on how to make good video ads, but that was covered in Monday's video ad webinar. How can I get you the video if you didn't attend the webinar? Neil, any thoughts on that? How might we get people that video? I don't want to put you on the spot, Neil, but.
Sorry, which video?
The recording from Monday's webinar, if people want to get access to that and they weren't there. Any thoughts?
Yeah, maybe just, that's a good question.
We'll chew on it.
Yeah, okay.
So we're still deciding whether they're going to be public. That's why we're stalling. We're going to figure that out. We might just make them private to people who sign up for Demand Curve. Tips for content to include in Neil, do you want to say something?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Cool. Noah asks, tips for content to include in emails. It's a great question. Honestly, I don't know that I'd include anything. If you attach something, it'll look like spam. If you link to something, it'll be kind of weird. Because you should first and foremost link to a landing page that pitches what you are and let the landing page talk about or lead people to the right content, right? Any advice on hiring great copywriters? Copy seems to be really important in regard to what you're saying. Great question. Again, I'm so sorry to do this, guys, but I've spent so much time on this and I know it'll be useful. Julian.com, click on the page called Making Ads, and there's a big section on how to write very punchy ad copy. If that doesn't get you far enough, go to Upwork or Copyblogger. Is it copybloggers.com or something? Copyblogger.com, I don't quite know. And Upwork, and you can hunt down copywriters and look at their sample work and see if they adhere to maybe the rules I lay out for you on Julian.com. That's so you can sanity check whether they're half decent or not, you know?
I also imagine you'll cover that a lot more in the content marketing webinar on Friday.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Neil. So on the content webinar on Friday, Nat Eliason, my co-host, has access to like hundreds of great copywriters. So you can ask him about that. What do you think will be the next big thing after paid advertising? Or how long do you think ads will continue being the main way to talk to your audience? I don't think it is the main way for most B2B companies targeting higher ACV or LTV customers. They don't normally make it work through ads. So they're usually using, conferences, biz dev, sales, cold outreach, maybe sponsorship. They can do a little bit of ad stuff here and there, other things I'm probably not thinking of. So, but I don't think ads are ever going to die. I think they'll always exist in some form. Even if everyone had ad blockers, you can still make ads native. Like you're not going to have an ad blocker for the Twitter native app. So ads are always going to exist in some capacity. I think they'll be around indefinitely, honestly. Hey everyone, that marks the end of the Demand Curves webinar. Thank you for listening. And you can go to demandcurve.com to have us train you in growth marketing.